As Alexander took his first steps down the familiar streets of his hometown, a strange wave of anxious nostalgia gripped his heart, as if an invisible hand had clenched around it. Over the years, almost nothing had changed. Those same weathered facades of old buildings, the same quiet, provincial melancholy in the air. He had returned for the funeral of Victor Palmer, an old family friend, someone he hadn't seen in over 10 years, but still remembered warmly from his childhood. The funeral was quiet, surprisingly emotionless. The elderly attendees merely nodded at Alexander as if silently acknowledging. "So, you've finally come back after all these years." Leaving the cemetery, Alexander realized he had lost his way, despite knowing the town like the back of his hand. It was as if something was unconsciously guiding him somewhere. And when he finally recognized where he was, his heart skipped a beat. He was standing in front of the iron gates of the old cemetery, the place where his mother had been buried 5 years ago. He froze. His feet had brought him here instinctively, to the very place he had spent years avoiding. 5 years. He hadn't even attended her funeral, convincing himself he was too busy with work, traveling, business deals, things that never seemed to end. These excuses had been convenient, but deep down, he knew the real reason. He was afraid to confront his own emotions, afraid to admit that he had never been the son he should have been. Somewhere deep inside, he always knew his mother had been waiting for him until her very last breath. But he had convinced himself that the money he sent would make up for his absence. And yet, standing before the cemetery gates, Alexander suddenly realized how foolish and naive that belief had been. Stepping through the rusted, cracked iron gates, he felt a strange discomfort, like an uninvited guest trespassing on sacred ground. The cemetery looked abandoned. Overgrown paths, crooked tombstones covered in moss. Yet, despite the years, his feet instinctively led him to his mother's grave. The inscription on the headstone had begun to fade under the relentless rain and time, but her name, Anna Sullivan, was still clearly visible, as if silently reproaching him for his years of indifference. Standing before her grave, Alexander felt a sharp pain in his chest. He wanted to say something, anything, but the words were stuck in his throat. His thoughts raced. Why had he been so afraid to come here? What was he so scared to see or hear? Perhaps he simply feared admitting that no amount of money could ever undo the mistakes of the past, nor bring back the moments he had lost forever. And now, standing alone before his mother's grave, he finally understood. His soul had been rotting with guilt, something no amount of wealth could erase. He dropped to his knees, feeling the cold, damp earth beneath his palms. He hadn't expected tears, but they came, uncontrolled and raw. The confident, self-made millionaire, the man who had built an empire with his own hands. Now he was just a son, realizing too late how terribly he had failed. Suddenly, behind him, a small, timid voice broke the silence. "Spare some change, sir, for the memory of your loved ones." Alexander turned sharply. A boy, no older than 8, stood before him in tattered clothes, holding a rusted tin cup in his small hands. His face was smudged with dirt, and yet his eyes held something so genuine, so haunting, that Alexander felt uneasy. Those words, "for the memory of your loved ones," hit him like a thunderbolt. His mother used to say the exact same phrase whenever she gave to the poor. Back then, Alexander had been annoyed by it, dismissing it as foolish sentimentality. And yet, here it was again, as if her voice had reached him from beyond, forcing him to face the questions he had long avoided. He stepped closer, studying the boy's dirty, thin face. There was something eerily familiar about him, something he couldn't quite place. Reaching for his wallet, Alexander hesitated, then, almost unconsciously, asked, "Who are your loved ones, kid? Who are you asking for?" The boy hesitated for a moment, then met his gaze with an unsettling, almost adult-like sadness. "The ones who are gone," he answered quietly. "A kind woman once told me never to forget them. She's gone now, but I do what she taught me." Alexander's breath hitched. The boy's words lodged themselves deep within his chest, stirring a storm of emotions he wasn't prepared for. Who was this child? Why did he speak in his mother's words? A creeping realization settled over him. This was no coincidence. And then, almost afraid of the answer, he finally asked, "What's your name?" The boy lowered his gaze, hesitated for a moment, then whispered the name that sent an icy chill through Alexander's veins. "Sarah used to call me Sam. She said she liked that name. She told me she had a son once, but he was far away. Now she's gone, and I'm all alone." The words hit Alexander like a freight train. Sudden, brutal, and impossible to ignore. His mother had called this boy Sam? Why? And more importantly, who was he? After the strange encounter at the cemetery, Alexander found himself drawn toward his mother's old house, a place he hadn't set foot in for years. He hesitated at the threshold, his fingers tightening around the key. The house looked frozen in time. The peeling front door, the floral curtains his mother had loved so much, the garden overgrown with wild ivy. He knew that stepping inside meant confronting the past he had been running from for so long. Turning the key in the lock, he felt his pulse quicken, a thin sheen of sweat forming on his palms. The door creaked open as if groaning under the weight of time. He stepped inside and stood still, allowing his eyes to adjust to the dimness. The air was thick with silence, heavy with memories. The living room remained untouched. The old couch with its faded upholstery stood in the same place, the walls still adorned with framed photographs, each covered in a thin layer of dust. His gaze landed on a particular photo, one of him as a child, sitting on his mother's lap. She was smiling, holding him close, while his younger self looked slightly annoyed. How many times had he dismissed her affection? Back then, he had seen her love as something overbearing, something to escape. Now, he would give anything to feel it just one more time. A wooden desk stood in the corner of the room, his mother's favorite spot. She would sit there for hours, writing letters, lost in thought. Curious, Alexander stepped forward and pulled open the top drawer. Inside, neatly stacked, was a pile of unopened envelopes, each addressed to him. His fingers trembled as he picked one up. The letters had been sent to his apartment in New York, but he had never received them. Or rather, he had never bothered to check. Heart pounding, he tore open the first envelope and unfolded the letter. His mother's handwriting, shaky yet familiar, filled the page. "My dear Alex, I write to you once again, though I don't know if you will ever read this. You're probably too busy. As always, too caught up in work and life to spare a moment for these words. But still, I write. I write because I miss you, because my hands ache, but my heart aches even more. I wish you would come home, even if only for a few days." Alexander blinked rapidly, his vision blurring. He placed the letter on the desk and took a deep breath, willing himself to remain composed. But curiosity and guilt compelled him to open another. "Alex, I have something important to ask of you. A few months ago, I started visiting an orphanage at the edge of town. That's where I met Sam. He's such a kind boy, Alex, so full of life despite being so alone. I wish I could bring him home, but I need your help. My health isn't what it used to be, and I don't know how much time I have left. Please come and meet him. You'll understand everything once you see him with your own eyes." Alexander's hands began to shake. He gripped the letter tighter, his breath coming in short, uneven bursts. His mother had been planning to adopt a child he had just met at her grave. He frantically opened another letter, then another. Each one spoke of the same boy, Sam. His mother's desperation grew with each letter, her words filled with love, but also with a silent, creeping sorrow. "Alex, I don't understand why you won't answer my calls. I know you're busy, but is this too much to ask? Sam reminds me so much of you when you were young. If you met him, you'd see it too. I beg you, my son, please come home." Tears blurred his vision. He had ignored her calls, dismissed her messages, and while he had been too consumed with work and wealth, she had been here, growing weaker, hoping he would come back. The final letter contained only 3 words, written in trembling script. "I forgive you. Alexander let out a strangled breath as hot tears streamed down his face. He had never even given her a chance to say goodbye. His mother's final wish had been for him to meet Sam, to help him. And now, standing in this empty house, surrounded by the echoes of her love, Alexander realized the truth. This boy, the one who had spoken to him at the grave, wasn't just some orphan his mother had cared for. He was her last request, the last chance to make things right. His mother had believed Sam belonged to their family, and now Alexander had no choice but to find out why. Alexander couldn't sleep that night. He lay on the creaky bed in his mother's old house, staring at the darkened ceiling, his thoughts racing. He had come back to this town for just a couple of days, to attend a funeral, pay his respects, and leave. But instead, he had been dragged into a past he had spent his whole life trying to forget. And now there was Sam. The boy haunted his thoughts, his face, his words. She called me Sam. She said she had a son, but he was far away. His mother had wanted him to meet this child. She had written to him, pleaded with him, and he had ignored her. He knew he couldn't leave without finding out the truth. At dawn, Alexander dressed quickly and headed to the orphanage his mother had mentioned in her letters. The building was old, its brick walls cracked, its windows dull with years of grime. It looked forgotten, just like the children inside. As he entered, a few kids playing in the courtyard stopped and stared at him, curiosity in their eyes. A tired-looking woman, her hair pulled into a loose bun, noticed him and approached cautiously. "Can I help you?" she asked. "I'm looking for information about a boy named Sam," Alexander said. "My mother, Anna Sullivan, used to visit him." The woman's expression softened. "Ah, yes, Anna was a wonderful woman. She cared for Sam as if he were her own." Her words sent a fresh pang of guilt through Alexander's chest. "Can you tell me more about him?" he asked. The woman, her name was Linda, sighed, gesturing for him to follow her into a small office. "Sam has been with us since he was a baby. He was left at a hospital shortly after birth. No one ever came for him. He grew up here, always quiet, always watching the other kids but never really joining in. And then Anna came along. She changed everything for him." Alexander swallowed hard. "She wanted to adopt him." Linda nodded. "She tried, but her health was failing, and by the time she started the paperwork, it was too late. She passed away before she could finalize anything." Alexander gripped the armrests of his chair. "And after that? After she died, Sam changed. He started waiting for her. Every day he would sit by the front gate watching, hoping she would come back. And when he finally understood she never would, he ran away." Alexander felt a lump form in his throat. "How long has he been gone?" "Almost 3 years." Alexander's breath caught. 3 years. The boy had been living on the streets all this time, surviving on his own. And no one looked for him? "We did. We reported him missing. The police searched for a while, but eventually they gave up. Children like Sam, they slipped through the cracks." Alexander clenched his jaw. His mother had seen something in this boy, something important, and he had ignored every single letter. Now the boy was lost, abandoned all over again. He stood abruptly. "I saw him yesterday. I have to find him again." Linda's eyes widened. "Where?" "The cemetery." Linda's face fell and she sighed. "That doesn't surprise me. He never really let go of her." Alexander nodded, determination tightening in his chest. He had failed his mother once. He wouldn't fail her again. Without another word, he turned and left. Outside, the air was crisp, the morning sun casting long shadows over the town. He had no idea where to start, but he knew one thing for certain. He wouldn't stop until he found Sam. Alexander left the orphanage with a sense of urgency burning inside him. He had spent his entire life running from emotions, from responsibility, from the past. But now, for the first time, he had something to chase, someone who needed him. He retraced his steps from the previous evening, searching through the narrow streets, abandoned alleyways, and hidden corners of the town. Sam had disappeared once before, and if Alexander lost him again, there was no guarantee he'd get another chance. Then, just as he was about to give up for the day, he saw a small figure darting into a rundown building at the edge of town. His heart pounded. It was him. Moving carefully, Alexander entered the building. The walls were covered in graffiti, the floors littered with broken glass and rotting wood. In the corner, near a pile of old blankets, Sam sat curled up, eating a piece of stale bread. As soon as the boy noticed Alexander, he froze. His entire body tensed, like a stray animal ready to flee. "Hey!" Alexander said gently, raising his hands to show he meant no harm. Sam didn't respond. His blue eyes were sharp, watching every movement with caution. "I'm not here to hurt you," Alexander continued. I want to talk." The boy's fingers tightened around the bread. "I don't talk to strangers," Sam muttered. Alexander hesitated. "I knew Anna. You're Sarah." The boy flinched at the name. He turned his face away, trying to hide the flicker of pain in his expression. "She said she had a son," Sam whispered, so quietly Alexander almost missed it. His chest tightened. "She did," Alexander admitted. "And I wasn't there when she needed me." Silence. The words hung between them, heavy, raw. Sam exhaled sharply. "She was waiting for you. Every time she came to see me, she said she hoped you'd come home." Alexander closed his eyes for a moment, overwhelmed by the weight of his regret. "I know," he said. "I made mistakes, but I want to make things right." Sam looked up at him then, his expression unreadable. "Why do you care now?" Alexander took a slow step forward, lowering himself onto an old wooden crate across from the boy. "Because I lost her," he said honestly. "And I didn't realize how much she meant to me until it was too late. But she meant a lot to you too, didn't she?" Sam looked away, biting his lip. "She was the only one who didn't leave." The words shattered something inside Alexander. "You're not alone, Sam." The boy scoffed. "That's what they all say." Alexander took a deep breath. "Then let me prove it." Sam narrowed his eyes. "How?" Alexander met his gaze, unwavering. "Come with me." The boy's body stiffened. "To where?" "Somewhere warm. Somewhere safe. I won't force you, but I think it's what Sarah would have wanted." A long silence followed. Sam stared at him, searching his face, looking for a reason to trust him. Then, hesitantly, he nodded. It was small, almost imperceptible, but it was a start. Alexander led Sam out of the abandoned building, feeling the weight of the moment. The boy, hesitant and wary, walked beside him in silence. The streets were dimly lit, the air carrying a slight chill, but Alexander barely noticed. His mind was racing, trying to figure out the next step. He knew Sam wouldn't trust him overnight. The boy had spent years alone, abandoned by the world. But at least he had agreed to come with him. That was something. They reached Alexander's car, an expensive black sedan that looked completely out of place in the worn-down neighborhood. Sam hesitated, his small hands tightening into fists. "You sure this isn't a trap?" he asked, eyeing the car suspiciously. Alexander sighed. "If I wanted to hurt you, I wouldn't be standing here trying to convince you." Sam didn't look convinced, but after a moment, he climbed into the passenger seat. The drive was quiet at first. The boy stared out the window, watching the dark streets blur past, his expression unreadable. Alexander wanted to say something, but he knew words wouldn't be enough to bridge the gap between them. Not yet. Finally, Sam broke the silence. "Where are we going?" "To a hotel," Alexander said. "Just for tonight. You don't have to stay if you don't want to. But I figured you could use a warm bed." Sam let out a short laugh, dry, humorless. "Luxury hotel rooms aren't really my thing." "You don't have to like it," Alexander replied. "Just take a break from sleeping on the streets." Sam didn't argue. He simply turned back toward the window. When they arrived at the hotel, Alexander booked a room under his name. The receptionist gave Sam a strange look. His dirty clothes, his thin frame, but Alexander ignored it. Once inside, Sam cautiously surveyed the space. The room was modern and comfortable, a far cry from where he had been sleeping before. But instead of relaxing, he stayed near the door, as if ready to run. You can take a shower if you want, Alexander offered. There are clean clothes for you, too. Sam didn't move. Why are you doing this? Alexander exhaled slowly. Because I should have done something a long time ago. Sam studied him, as if searching for cracks in his sincerity. Sarah used to say you were important, the boy finally said. She always talked about you like you were some kind of hero. Alexander's throat tightened. She gave me too much credit. Sam shrugged. Guess I'll find out for myself. Alexander didn't know what to say to that, so he simply nodded. Get some rest, Sam. We'll talk more in the morning. The boy hesitated for a moment, then, without a word, disappeared into the bathroom. As the sound of running water filled the room, Alexander sat on the edge of the bed, staring at nothing in particular. His mother had wanted him to know this boy. She had believed in him, and now Alexander was beginning to understand why. But trust wasn't something that could be bought or forced. If he wanted to prove he wasn't going to walk away, he would have to earn it. And that would take time. Alexander woke up early the next morning to the sound of movement. He turned his head and saw Sam sitting on the edge of the bed, fully dressed in the clean clothes Alexander had left for him. The boy looked different. His face was no longer streaked with dirt, his hair damp from the shower, but his expression was the same. Guarded, uncertain. You're up early, Alexander noted, stretching. Sam shrugged. Didn't sleep much. Alexander understood. It was probably the first time in years the boy had slept in a real bed. Comfort, after so much hardship, could be just as unsettling as anything else. He sat up, rubbing his face. You hungry? Sam hesitated, then gave a small nod. They went down to the hotel restaurant, where Alexander ordered breakfast for both of them. As they waited for the food, Sam traced patterns on the table with his fingers, looking anywhere but at Alexander. So what now? The boy finally asked. Alexander leaned forward slightly. That's up to you. Sam frowned. What do you mean? I told you before. I won't force you to do anything, but I'd like you to come with me. Sam tensed. To where? New York. With me. We could figure things out together. The boy looked at him suspiciously. And what am I supposed to do there? Live in your fancy house and pretend I belong? Alexander sighed. I don't expect you to pretend anything, but I do think you deserve better than living on the streets. Sam scoffed. That's what people always say. And then, when they get tired of me, they leave. Alexander flinched at the words. I'm not going to leave, Sam. The boy let out a bitter laugh. That's what she said too. But she's gone, isn't she? Alexander felt something inside him crack. She didn't leave by choice, he said quietly. Sam clenched his jaw. Neither of them spoke for a while. The food arrived, but Sam barely touched his plate. Alexander wanted to push, to convince him, but he knew the boy needed time. Finally, Sam exhaled and leaned back in his chair. You really think she wanted me to go with you? Alexander nodded. I know she did. The boy was quiet for a long moment. Then, almost reluctantly, he muttered, All right, but if I hate it, I'm leaving. Alexander didn't smile. He knew better than to think he had won Sam's trust already. But it was a start. And for now, that was enough. The flight to New York was quiet. Sam sat by the window, staring out at the clouds, his fingers tapping idly against the armrest. He hadn't said much since agreeing to come with Alexander. He hadn't asked questions or shown any excitement about leaving. It was as if he was preparing himself for disappointment, expecting that, sooner or later, Alexander would change his mind. Alexander didn't push him. Instead, he focused on what came next. By the time they landed, the city was already glowing with evening lights. Sam's eyes flickered with curiosity as he took in the towering buildings and endless streams of people moving in all directions. But just as quickly, he masked it, shoving his hands into his pockets. Big city, he muttered. Alexander smirked. You get used to it. They drove in silence to Alexander's apartment. A sleek, modern space with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the skyline. Sam hesitated in the doorway, his expression unreadable. This is where you live? he asked skeptically. Yeah, for now. Sam stepped inside cautiously, his eyes scanning the expensive furniture, the spotless floors, the massive TV mounted on the wall. Figures, he mumbled. Rich guy house. Alexander chuckled. You'll get used to it. The boy didn't respond. He walked past the living room, glancing at everything but touching nothing. Alexander could see the tension in his shoulders, the way he kept his guard up, ready to leave at a moment's notice. You don't have to stay forever, Alexander said after a moment. Just try it for a while. Sam exhaled. Guess I don't have a choice now, huh? You always have a choice. Sam rolled his eyes. Right? Alexander knew it would take time. The boy didn't trust easily, and why would he? He had been abandoned too many times before. But Alexander wasn't planning on going anywhere. Not this time. The first few days in New York were tense. Sam kept his distance, barely speaking, barely engaging. He roamed the apartment as if it were temporary, never getting comfortable, never letting his guard down. Alexander gave him space, but it was hard. He had never been responsible for anyone before. He wasn't sure what to say, what to do, how to make the boy feel like he belonged. One evening, after another silent dinner, Sam finally broke the quiet. So, what exactly do you expect from me? Alexander looked up from his plate. I don't expect anything. Sam scoffed. Come on. Nobody does something for nothing. You took me off the street, gave me a place to stay, and now what? What's the catch? Alexander sighed, leaning back in his chair. There's no catch, Sam. I want to help. The boy crossed his arms. Why? Alexander hesitated. Because I should have been there for Sarah when she needed me. And I wasn't. But she cared about you, and I know she'd want me to do this. Sam's jaw tightened. He looked away, picking at his food. She really talked about me that much? Every letter she wrote me was about you. The boy swallowed hard, pretending not to care. But Alexander saw the way his fingers curled slightly, the way his breathing changed. It mattered. He just didn't know how to accept it yet. After a long silence, Sam muttered, I don't know how to live like this. Like what? Like a normal person, sleeping in a bed, having meals every day, not worrying about cops chasing me off the street. Alexander studied him carefully. You don't have to figure it all out right away. Just take it one day at a time. Sam didn't say anything else. But that night, for the first time, he didn't sleep with his shoes on. It was a small thing, but to Alexander it meant everything. Weeks passed, and little by little things began to change. Sam still kept his guard up, still tested Alexander at every turn, but the hostility in his voice was fading. He no longer flinched when Alexander spoke his name. He no longer ate his food in hurried bites, as if afraid it would be taken away. And he no longer stayed up at night, sitting by the window, ready to run. He was still wary, but he was trying. One evening, after dinner, Alexander found Sam sitting on the couch, flipping through an old photo album he had left on the coffee table. The album belonged to his mother. Alexander's chest tightened as he saw Sam tracing his fingers over a picture of Sarah, his mother, smiling, holding a much younger Alexander in her arms. She looks happy, Sam murmured. She was. Sam hesitated. Did she ever tell you about me? Alexander exhaled. Not until the letters. I didn't even know you existed. Sam swallowed. She wanted me to meet you. Alexander nodded. Yeah, she did. The boy was silent for a long moment, then finally asked the question Alexander knew had been weighing on him for weeks. Do you think she would have been proud of me? Alexander felt his throat tighten. Sam, she was already proud of you. Sam blinked rapidly, looking away. You don't know that. Yes, I do. Alexander leaned forward. She didn't love you because you were perfect. She loved you because you were you. That was enough for her. And it's enough for me. Sam's lips pressed into a thin line. He nodded once, quickly, as if trying to hide how much the words meant. For the first time since they met, Alexander saw it, the smallest, most fragile spark of trust in the boy's eyes. It wasn't much, but it was real. And that meant everything.